Hi everybody and good evening, welcome. I'm so glad to see so many people out here today. I'm very excited to talk about funding education, the financial aid process, funding education beyond high school with the least possible debt. Okay, so I'm from InvestEd. We've been around for over 40 years here in Indiana. We're a not-for-profit and we're all focused on people getting more education and less debt. Here you go. Thank you. More education and less debt, and for about the last 20 years, we've been working with high schools across the state, counselors sort of telling one another about the services we offer, and this year we're going to have over 700 of these types of events across the state. Just more and more families learning about all the different types of financial aid, the different ways to go about funding education with less student loan debt. So that's our mission, that's who we are, that's what we do. I always make sure everybody has a guide. There's two main important reasons why I want everybody to have the guide. The first important reason why I want everybody to have a guide is that on here, we have our phone number and our email address. I'm gonna throw a lot out at you over the next 45 minutes or so. We're gonna talk about a lot of wonderful things. But what happens is people go home, they live some life, they start going through the financial aid or the college selection process. They're going along doing things, and then they say, now I have a question. So tonight you might not have a question, but in March you might have a question. So our phones are ringing all throughout the year with different questions, and people just reach out to us. You can email us, you can call us. You don't have to give your name, no social security number, anything. You just ask the question. We'll help you completely free. We have a team of experts that'll just be happy to help you. So anything with Fafsa filing, anything with college financial aid, anything like that, we're happy to help, and that's what we do. But anyway, so don't forget the phone number, don't forget the email address, it's right there, so I want to make sure that everybody has that. Before I turn to the first slide, I'm going to pass this around. We have an electronic newsletter because as things in financial aid, they're changing every day. They just constantly change. So we have this event, but by February, things could massively change in financial aid. There's rules and different things that get adjusted all the time. So once a month, we send out a e-newsletter. Number one, you do not have to subscribe. That's no problem at all. Number two, if you do subscribe, there's a big unsubscribe button right there on the front. So even if you subscribe, you just click unsubscribe if you didn't want. If you want to be on the e-newsletter list, just give us your email here. You don't have to. I'm going to turn the other way, so no one won't even know if anybody just passes it along. I don't care. So we just make that available for you. Okay, so now let's get to the topics. So here's the topics. First of all, we're going to talk about an overview of financial aid. Let's get a real clear picture of what financial aid is, what it isn't, what it is. Let's do an overview. Then we're going to talk financial aid terminology. When I started doing this almost 20 years ago, everything is an acronym in financial aid. And I would sit there and I would be at these gatherings and people would talk about COA and FA, FSA and EFC and all these different things. And I had no clue what they were talking about, but they were talking about it like everybody knew and I didn't. And so one of the things in financial aid is as you're going through the process, you're going to get bombarded with all these different terms, and if you don't know exactly what they mean, you could actually make some bad choices, and so we don't want anybody to be in that position that I was for quite some time. Fafsa Overview. Okay, I'm going to ask my first question of the evening here. In financial aid, there's one most important form. What do you think that form is?
Fafsa.
Yes, that's why I love coming.
It's October 1st.
Oh, very good, very good. See, that's why I love coming here. See, Fafsa. Just a little tip. I ask a lot of questions throughout the night. The answer is almost always Fafsa. Okay, so the Fafsa overview, we don't go through every single question for two reasons. One, a lot of them just don't need explanation. But number two, the Fafsa now has a lot of skip logic in it. Just like when you go to the store, you want to buy something online from Target. Well, it starts out with 8 million items. Then you say umbrella, and it shrinks to 100. Well, same thing with the Fafsa. It starts off with 100 questions. You answer one question, and all of a sudden 22 disappear behind the scenes that you never see. So a lot of them just don't need explanation. We'll talk about an overview of the areas where we get the most phone calls when people have the most questions, okay? We'll then talk about next steps, because after you file the Fafsa, it's not over. In some ways, it's just beginning. We'll talk about next steps, And we'll also remind you that we will help. I hope I'm exuding that here today, that we're a not-for-profit, we love helping people, and that's what we do. We help people, and we love to help. Here's your book.
Thank you.
All you missed was the beginning introduction of what we're going to do. We've done nothing. Well, everybody else has done great. I've done nothing yet. Now we're going to do something. Financial aid overview. Okay? Financial aid. What is financial aid? The primary goal is to assist students in paying for college. It's actually to assist students in paying for education beyond high school, of which college is a huge portion of that. Paying for college, paying for education. It is achieved by evaluating the family's ability to pay. There is a form that is used to do that evaluation of a family's ability to pay. Does anybody want to take a guess what that form is called? Yes, see, it's a very easy game, okay? I point, we yell FAFSA. Okay, evaluating the family's ability to pay is done with, I thought you were somebody else. Evaluating the family's ability to pay is done through the FAFSA. So just like taxes is the 1040, for financial aid you have the FAFSA. So you plug in the information and the evaluation is done. So families across the country and across Indiana are filing the FAFSA, okay? Distributing limited resources in an equitable manner. The college, the scholarship provider, the state, the federal government, there is X number of dollars that have to be divvied up. So they try to figure out how to divide that up. Many times a college will have X number of dollars and they'll give out $2,000 here, $2,000 there. They will often not give like $18 and they will often not give a full ride. Because what they like to do is sort of a balance between gift aid and self-help aid. So a student might need $10,000, they might get $5,000 or $6,000, and then the school will say, hey, you gotta kind of either take a federal student loan or do some work study or something like that for the rest. So usually in financial aid, there's going to be multiple ways that the funding gets done, all right? And what we do is we talk about a gift aid and self-help aid, all right? Gift aid, if you think of presents and Christmas, you know, yay, gift aid, right? Doesn't have to be paid back. So whenever somebody calls us and asks questions about how to fund education, hey, I want to look at this and that, we always start with the gift aid, right? We talk about FAFSA, did you file the FAFSA, have you looked at schools, have you done examination of the schools, all these different things that we recommend. Then after that, have you filed the FAFSA? You got to file the FAFSA to get in the game. Then after you file the FAFSA, we want to look at the net price of the school. There's all these steps that we talk about in here on our website, in our discussions, or if you call. Walk through those steps, and then we get to gift aid. We want to get the gift aid as high as possible. Hopefully there is a COA, cost of attendance. The gift aid covers it, and you owe nothing after that. That's not often the case, but that's sort of the goal, okay? Then after gift aid, grants and scholarships is self-help aid. And self-help aid is student employment and loans, all right? Student employment, work study through the federal work study program or just working at McDonald's or whatnot, is employment. Make some money, take it off the bill, have less debt. Loans, this is the point of the discussion where I always ask a question, I'm always interested in people's responses. As far as officially financial aid, true financial aid when they give the numbers for the country and all that. When they talk about financial aid, are federal student loans considered financial aid? The answer to this is not FAFSA, by the way. Are federal student loans financial aid?
Yes, but it's aid enough to pay back.
Yes! I can tell why you sat in the front row. That is very good. So, you can see why there's a conundrum here. Like last night I was talking to some families, they're like, that's not aid. Like this is what it's included in the numbers as aid. So when you get an award letter under financial aid, there will sometimes be loans. So we get a lot of calls from families saying, wait a minute, why are there loans in my financial aid? So it is part of aid, but as you notice, we do gift aid first, then self-help aid. We talk about grants, we talk about scholarships, we talk about student employment, and then we talk about loans. We don't engage in the whole loan part until every other stone has been kicked, until every other avenue has been explored, okay? But they are considered financial aid. So sometimes you'll open up the newspaper, online, digital, okay. You'll open up a story and you'll hear how there's $83 billion in aid that just went out the door. A lot of that was loans, okay? That's where some of that comes from, okay? But there are scams out there. I held the check in my hand, southern part of the state, wonderful lady came up to me, paid $812 they were guaranteed at least $3,000 of financial aid for $812. The scammer gave them a link to the federal student loan website because they would get the student loan for $3,000. Thank you so much. Thank you. And by the way, the meeting was held near the airport, so if you're ever invited to a meeting near the airport, be really careful, okay? I had my event last night was by the airport, and I said, don't ever go to a meeting by the airport. I was like, oh wait, we're by the airport. But that was a legit meeting, okay? So these are the types of aid. These are the parts of financial aid, and let's take a quick look here at grants. So we always start with grants. Here's the great news about grants. To get in the game for grants, you file the FAFSA. File the FAFSA, you're in the game for grants. With grants, you don't have to kind of go one to the next like you do with scholarships or some other things. Grants are done by the federal government. Most people know about the Pell Grant. They're done by the state of Indiana with things like the 21st Century Scholars Program, the Franco-Bannon Grant, okay? These are wonderful grants out there that you don't have to write an essay for. You just fill out the FAFSA. The federal government gets the information about your FAFSA. The state gets the information about the FAFSA. And then the school will process a certain amount of aid for those grants if you are eligible. Okay, so grants are the first thing out of the gate. It doesn't have to be repaid, and you kind of don't have to go item by item with it. You got to file the FAFSA. Okay, if you make $28 million a week, you're not going to get grants. Okay, of this type. You're not going to get them. Okay, but you file the FAFSA, you're in the game. School gets their information, Fed gets their information, state gets their information, and the grants come out. The only one that has a little bit of requirements is the 21st Century Scholars Grant. Helped a lot of Hoosiers over the years, helped a lot of students. And with the 21st Century Scholars Grant, there's a few things you have to do. One of them is file the FAFSA, big surprise. But then you have to, pre-COVID, you had to like go visit a college or two. There's a few other things you have to do, but it's a fair amount of money. Okay, so don't miss out on that. There's a few steps you have to take, and it's a wonderful grant and it helps a lot of people. But grants is the first item out of the gate. File the FAFSA, you're in the game. Let me go back one real quick. Yes, I want to spend a moment on this. This, I think, is one of the most important parts that I want to talk about here tonight. Okay, there is on time and there is full time. Okay? There's a very specific reason I'm showing you this slide, okay? But let's walk through it real quick. Basically, let's say you're going for a 4-year degree, 120 credits to graduate, okay? Some programs are slightly different, but for the most part, 4 years, 30 credit hours per year, 15 in the fall, 15 in the spring. Most classes are 3 credits, so it's 5 classes in the fall, 5 classes in the spring. 30, 30, 30, 30, graduate, get on with your life. There's also something called full-time, which is 12 credits. Full-time meaning you're considered a full-time student, you're eligible for whatever the aid is at a full amount, okay? But as you notice, you don't graduate after the 4th year. After the 4th year, you don't move on with your life. You go for another year. So there's full-time and there's on-time. And that's a really important distinction. More and more students are taking 5 or 6 or 7 years, okay, to graduate. More time, more chance for something bad to go wrong. More time, more cost. Let's say school costs $10,000 a year. 4 years times $10,000 a year, $40,000. When I speak to students during the daytime, I go 4 years, $10,000, $40,000. 5 years, $10,000, and the students go, 80? Okay, that was a joke. Okay, anyway, so 5 years times 10 is 50. That's extra money. There's more chance for a bad thing to happen. There's additional time. There's additional cost. Okay? So this is happening. But there's another reason why I'm showing you this. What the state and others found is that once you start to fall behind, most students don't ever finish. Once they start to fall behind, the percentages go down and down. And so the state, a few years back, started to assess how far the students were behind, and there are thresholds where you get a little bit less aid, a little bit less aid, and then you don't get the aid as you're falling further and further behind. So now, We used to hear in year 4 or year 5, families would call us and go, hey, whoa, there's all sorts of trouble. Now we hear it about sophomore year or junior year because the aid has started to go down. Just because they're so far behind. They can make it up during the summer, right? There's things that they can do, but the point is you don't want to fall behind extra years, extra time, extra chance for things to fall behind. This is a big reason why student loan debt is going up like it is. Now let me give you another reason, okay? With a lot of these programs, there are 8 semesters for aid. There's a clock. So we get calls from families that are going for year 5, and the family says, hey, school cost 10, we had to pay 5, school cost 10, we had to pay 5. Now all of a sudden school costs 10 and we have to pay 10. And before we look into it, we have a pretty good idea that the time ran out on their particular aid that they were getting. The window closed, the clock ran out. So now not only is it extra time, but it's now an extra year where you have to almost pay full freight. And this is where, what are you going to do? Have Mary or Johnny sit there with 94 credit hours and no degree? And this is where a lot of the additional debt happens, down in here. So that's why I really feel this is one of the most important slides. I always tell people, when the student comes home for winter break after first semester and they come home, you haven't seen them for 4 months, they come to give you a hug. Say, I'm not hugging you until you tell me that you're on time to graduate. That's what I do. My kids come home from 3rd grade and I go, are you on time to graduate? They're like, Daddy's very odd, you're not at work. Okay? But anyways, very serious, there are so many reasons why this is a very important slide. Keep them on time as best as you possibly can. It's a very big deal. Okay? Come on. Did I press it? I thought I did. Scholarships. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide. Why am I not going to spend a lot of time on this slide? Number one, we have a beautiful web page on this. It's always investedinIndiana.org and then some. InvestedinIndiana.org scholarship. Okay? We have a page in here about it as well. Okay? We have one-pagers that I'm going to show you, okay, on our tips for scholarships. Wonderful jam-packed page of information. So I don't need to go through it all here step by step. Are scholarships real? Yes. Do you have to be valedictorian or the star of the football team? No. Can these national things where you type in you like ping pong and horror movies? Yes, they can work. One thing, don't ever pay. They don't need you to pay $2 for the scholarship. If you have a question and you're getting charged $2 for a scholarship or about to, call our number right here and our person will say, no, don't pay it. There's enough other ones, okay? The good news is you can now, through some of these sites, apply for a lot of them real fast. You have a Word document, cut and paste, cut and paste, cut and paste. Just make sure when you apply for the Coke scholarship and the Pepsi scholarship, you change a word in there about which is your favorite, stuff like that, okay? You can apply for a lot of them. Just remember, when you're going for a $10,000 scholarship, there's a lot more competition than the $500 scholarship. I've spoken at so many of these nights across the state where the community foundation person comes in pleading with somebody to write a paragraph for $500. 16, 17, 18-year-old students, $500 doesn't mean much. 21 and 22-year-olds that call us after they have student loan debt, $500 to them is like $1 million. It's that little window in here where it just doesn't seem like much and then all of a sudden it clicks. The problem is we got to deal with it on the front end, okay? Scholarships are real. Reach out to our team if you have questions. There's only one thing we won't help you with. We don't write essays. A nice young person called one day and they were like, you got to help me. I just don't know what to do. I said, okay, I'm a wonderful student. I really love school. I'm going to do wonderful things for the planet. I'm a really nice person. He was like, slow down, I can't write that fast. I go, okay, you get the idea, all right? We don't write essays. Anything else we'll be happy to help you with. They are real. You can get them. We had a story from a Commission of Higher Ed person I was working with the other day. They had a student from like an Illinois only scholarship, and they got it. They were like, just fill it out. And they had nobody to apply for it. They had nobody to apply for it. There was another one, a $5,000 scholarship. They had 2 people apply. They gave the winner $5,000. They gave $1,000 to the other person just because there was only 2 applicants. It's not a joke. The lower the amount, the less the activity, and you can make a real nice fair amount of money on these scholarships, but you just got to put a little time in. Here's what I always tell people. If it took you 10 hours over the course of a month to get $1,000, that's $100 an hour, right? If it took you 20 hours to get $1,000, that's $50 an hour. That's pretty good money, okay? They are real. Oh, guess what? We have a scholarship. Who knew? Okay? So about 5 years ago, I went to my boss and I said, hey, people think the only people that get scholarships are the valedictorian or the star of the football team. I said, can we have a scholarship? He said, well, yeah, no problem. So we set up a scholarship. Every year we give away $5,000. 5 $1,000 scholarships, again, invested in it or less than 1,000. You give your name and email or something, and a family can have two, a student and a parent, okay? And we just pick out of a hat digitally. We do it digitally in the spring. But we pick out of a hat, and we give away 5 $1,000 scholarships just to prove that not everything needs to be a valedictorian or a 72-page essay. You go in there, you register, and it's fun, and you might win $1,000. I have to share one story. We talk about scams all the time because we are terrified anybody ever gets scammed, okay? So we have this scholarship. One of our first winners ever, like 5, 6 years ago, and I think it was in the southern below Indy. I can't remember the school. Young lady wins the scholarship. We call her and go, hey, you won a $1,000 scholarship. And she hung up. She thought it was a scam. So we had to call a counselor at the school and say, hey, Mary won a scholarship. Oh, well, she hung up on us. She goes, oh, did she lose the scholarship? No, we want to give her more because we thought it was so cool. It was a great response, and now we contact differently because we were like, oh yeah, it sounds like a scam. It's not a scam, it's real, and we give away 5 a year. Okay, and that's a lot of fun, and it's nice, and some of the kids, it's just so beautiful, and they cry, and it's wonderful. Okay, student employment. Again, I don't have to spend a lot of time in this, I just want to point this out. If over the course of 5 summers, right before college, and then, during college and whatnot, okay? If you just put away $2,000, let's say $2,500, $2,000, something like that, you're looking at $10,000 or more dollars that can go towards books, pizza money, just stuff. It makes a big difference. Now again, I talk to families all the time, the parents are like, no work, no work, no work. That's a family decision, that's not up to us. But one of the things is 5 years or 4.5 years, the time period of this process is a significant amount. It's a good chunk of life. And if you do some of the work, you get networking, you get some time management skills. They've done studies. Students that work a bit have better grades and better outcomes. I'm not talking about 51 hours a week while they're taking classes. But a little bit is a very good thing. It's not for everybody, but it is one way where you can knock that student loan debt down a little bit, keep it down. And the better you can do on the front end of keeping it down is a wonderful thing. There is the federal work study program where on the FAFSA it'll say, are you interested in work study? I always tell everybody to put yes. Why? Because it says I'm open to it. You may not get it anyway, depending on the info on the FAFSA. But if you put yes, you may not get it. If you put yes and you get it, and the school says, hey, $2,000 for work study, you still don't have to take it. You don't have to do it. But if you don't do it, you do have to find another way to come up with that $2,000. You can pay cash or whatever. But if you say yes, and the school awards it to you, then you work with the school. My brother worked at the dining hall, so he would get some money, towards his college, and then extra cupcakes, and it was a good thing, right? Okay, so anyway, work study is a very good thing, or maybe you want to work at McDonald's or whatever people do. You could do something like that. Education loans. Again, we start with the cost of attendance. We pick the right school. We do analysis of the net cost of that school. We do a lot of research on our own to try to keep things down. Then we go to grants. Then we file the FAFSA. We go to grants. We go to scholarships. We go to all this type of self-help aid. We go to all this gift aid. When the school then sends award letters, school will send an award letter. We recommend you get more than one. Apply to a few schools, even if you're like, we're pretty sure. It's really nice when people have a few award letters. I was helping out at this wonderful event about 2 years ago before COVID. I was helping out at this wonderful event, and the father came up and said, hey, is this a good award letter? And I said, all right, so how many more schools is the student applying to? Just this one, that's it. I said, well, it looks good to me. Like, there you go. Like, you don't have other things, other options, other things to compare to. When you see 3 or 4 side by side, sometimes they look very similar. Very similar. Sometimes 1 or 2 of them really look different as far as the net price and things like that. That doesn't mean you always take the least expensive school. There's so many other things that you're evaluating. But it is interesting. I've talked to families all the time where the student was like, I'll go here, I'll go here. They're really open, whatever is the best path, right? And then you look at the award letters and it's like, wow, for half the price I can go to this one and it's a good school. And they're like, yeah, I'm good with that, right? Sometimes they have their heart set on one and that's that. That's okay, that happens too. But you look at the award letters. So why am I talking about that right before we get to loans? So you start with the cost of attendance, you add in the gift money, the scholarships, the institution, the school will often throw in a few bucks, okay? Institutional aid, right? So we go through all that, and then we get to this final part. In the final part, you can always write a check. You can always go to the backyard, there's a coffee can buried somewhere, hopefully you know where you put it. Grab out some 20s and 50s, you can always do that. You can do payment plans, things like that. But oftentimes, families turn to some education loans, all right? If you do, we want that number to be as small as possible. Also, in most cases, almost all cases, the federal student loan is the starting point, and hopefully that gets it done. So the student can borrow in their own name, no credit check, no nothing. The rate right now is 3.73 for the upcoming year, okay? You do have a 1% fee on that. But that's the federal student loan. That's the old-timey federal student loan that everybody knows about, right? And that's, you'll see that on the award letter. Boom, 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 and you'll see federal student loan or Stafford loan, something like that. And hopefully that gets it done and you're good to go. On you go, student wants to take that, they take the federal student loan and they get on with their life, okay? There are two types of federal student loans. You have the subsidized and the unsubsidized. Again, depending on what your FAFSA says, the government may pay the interest while you're in school, while the student is in school, okay? They borrow $2,000, they finish school, $2,000 is owed, 6 months separation from the school, then they start to make some payments, okay? Or unsubsidized, which means you have a little higher amounts on the FAFSA as far as your income and things like that. And in that case, the 3.73 kicks in. But you could even make, one of the things we talk to families about is making those interest-only payments. Well, even if you don't want to pay it all, you can make the interest-only payments, and then it just never grows, and then you just pay a couple bucks a month, and it would just sort of hold at $2,000 or $3,000 or whatever. You can do that, okay? But then we get to the Federal Direct Plus loan. Plus stands for Parent Loan for Undergraduate Students. There's also a plus for graduate students, but that's another story. Parent Loan for Undergraduate Students. Plus. P, parent, P, parent. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to families, and the family goes, school costs $50, I see a zero at the bottom, I'm good to go. And I say, are you good with the $22,000 parent loan? They go, that's a parent grant. I go, that's a parent loan. And then they go, whoa. I've talked to other families, I'm like, are you good with the $31,000 parent loan? They're like, yeah, we're good. I'm like, okay. Like, everybody's different, every family is different, that's great, okay? But the parent loan, the plus loan, is a federal loan from the federal government for the parent. Here's the thing about the plus loan that I want you to know. Parent loan is cost of attendance minus other aid. That's how much the plus loan could be. So if school costs 10 and other aid gets you to 7, the most a plus loan could be would be $3,000. If school is 60 and other aid is 30, the plus loan could be 30. You don't ever have to borrow the max. You don't ever have to borrow anything. Okay? I'm just telling you the maximum so you know. So you know what the terms are and what the maximums are. There's something, we talk about this cost of attendance, I'm going to show you an award letter real quick. That is based on the maximum amount for that school. Every school has to have one. That doesn't mean you have to spend it. It doesn't mean you have to get the best meal plan. You have to get a brand new laptop. Well, Mary got a brand new laptop a year ago. It's fine. They count money in there just in case you need one. Stuff like that. Okay? All right? You don't have to spend to that number, even though it's there. That's an important thing. You don't have to buy the best books. All sorts of things like that. Okay? All right? But that's the plus one. And then the final thing is private loans. Private loans are outside the federal system. If you have a good FICO, you can often beat the 6.28 with a 4.2% fee. If you don't have a good FICO, you're probably not going to beat the 6.28 with a 4.2% fee.
What's considered a good FICO? Generally speaking.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I was spending some time on this today. If you're in the mid 700s, depending on the lender, all sorts of other variables. But if you're in the mid 700 range, you're at a really interesting point where it's kind of, if you're above the mid 700s, the rate will be south of that probably, depending on the lender and whatnot. If you're in the high 600s, the plus loan is probably the way to go. There's a few other variables, but that's a good little gauge. Okay? Great stuff. Okay? But that is last. Loans are last.
Why would somebody need a plus, like, why would somebody use a plus loan before they would use the kid getting a loan?
They wouldn't. It's funny, I wonder what's... That's interesting. It looked like there was a blank slide. I'm not sure. Oh, maybe one of the graphics didn't come across. Who am I talking to? I'm sorry. Hello. I would always do, and that's why foundationally, if you dip your toe at all into, no matter who's paying it, let's say the parent says, I'm going to pay it, it's fine, I'll help you out, whatever.
So put in the kid's name and then
Always.
pay it for them. Okay.
I would always do that, yes.
Yeah.
I would. It's the foundational piece. If you're going to dip your toe into any loan, you do the federal Stafford loan. It's got the lowest rate, the lowest fee.
Yeah.
That's where I would go. Yeah. Yes, great question.
What's
Thank
the
you.
max that the kid can have though?
5,500. It depends on, yes. And it depends on dependent, independent, and a few other things. The parent going, we'll get into the weeds just a little bit. If a student were independent, they can get a little bit more. If they're dependent, they get a little bit less. But here's the thing I want to get to. If the parent goes for a plus loan, a parent loan, and they get denied, then the additional eligibility kicks in. Yeah. So again, depending on the cost of the school, it often gets it done. But those amounts have sort of been sitting there for quite some time. Yeah. The face you're making is the face we get a lot. Yeah. Yes. They say sometimes they say if the amounts go up, then the schools are going to raise the cost.
Is that per year?
I'm sorry?
Is that
Per year. Everything I'm talking about is per year. Yes, thank you for that too. Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're saying. Anybody else? This is great. Just keep, if you have questions, just yell them out. I love it. Okay, terminology, terminology real quick. We're just going to talk a little terminology. I've been yelling out FAFSA. Does anybody here know what the first word the first F in FAFSA stands for? I love coming here. It's so great. Everybody's got answers. The free application for federal student aid. Here's good news. It's not just for federal student aid. Everybody works off the FAFSA. The college works off the FAFSA. The state of Indiana everybody works off FAFSA. Okay? So it's not just for federal student aid. It's for all aid. Okay? Annual application. Okay? Basis for determining grants, work study loans, all this type of stuff. In the loan area, that's how they determine unsub or subsidized stuff like that. Okay? They have a mobile app. The app is really good. Sometimes people try to file their FAFSA. I even have the big screen. If you can do it on a laptop or something, let's I think it's much better. But it's a good app. Download the app. It's good things. You can check on balances and things like that. Okay? Free application for federal student aid, FAFSA.gov. FAFSA.gov is where we're filing. FAFSA.gov. Free application for federal student aid. That is the biggie. This Google Docs is changing up some of the font here a little bit.
Changes the spacing.
It changes the spacing, doesn't it? Okay, so anyway, there's something called the expected family contribution. They're phasing that out and moving to something called the student aid index. Whatever they call it, here's what matters. You file the FAFSA. You file the FAFSA honestly. You file the FAFSA on time. You get the FAFSA done. The FAFSA is going to spit out a number that is used to sort of index people across the country so that if you have a lower expected family contribution, if you have a lower amount that the index kind of says you're going to need to put forward towards this process, then you get more aid. Okay? If you have a higher amount, you're going to get less aid for the most part. Okay? So I was helping a family a few years back. Their EFC was about $93,000 or something like that. And the parents looked up at me and they said, how are we doing? And I said, in life or in financially? In life, they were doing really good. Okay? So you fill out the FAFSA, you put in the information, it kicks out an EFC, an expected family contribution. We're moving to the student aid index. Fine. It looks at the parent income and assets, the student income and assets, and that's what spits out this index. And so you're being compared with families all across the country, okay? FAFSA calculation based on income, assets, family data, more people living in the house plays into it, stuff like that. 2 students going to college at the same time plays into it, all these different types of things. Expected family contribution used by the college to calculate your offer. If you have more questions about the calculator, investinindiana.org/FAFSA, or you just call the number right here and talk to the wonderful people on my team, and they will be happy to chat with you about it. Okay? We get a lot of questions about this. This is a big deal. But the important thing is file the FAFSA, file it properly, and then move forward from there, and that's what the FAFSA spits out. I'm losing all my fancy graphics and things. College costs. There's 2 types of things. There's direct costs, and then there's cost of attendance. I keep talking about COA, cost of attendance. Cost of attendance is the big number. And when articles want to really scare people about education after high school, they talk about cost of attendance. This school costs $61,000. What does the average family pay? 30. I'm not trying to minimize 30, but they talk about the 61. But what do the people pay? 30, right? When I go to buy a car, I walk on the lot. Sticker price, $84,000. What am I going to pay? $1,100. Okay, $1,100. Okay, that's better. Cost of attendance, okay, everything. Cost of attendance is tuition. Cost of attendance is room and board, books and supplies, transportation. They had to bring in a number because if the student could get to class and have a room, but couldn't get books, couldn't get to school, couldn't get home from school, couldn't do lab fees, you need a number that incorporates that, okay? That's the big number. Direct costs are tuition, room and board, boom, directly to the college. But we know that school costs more than that. So there are things that you buy that you don't pay directly to the college that are a part of it. You're not going to buy the laptop for the most part from the college. You're not going to buy some of these things. But that's why that number is there, but you don't have to spend to that number. So total COA 27,200. I've talked to families and they go, well, I've been calculating it really close and I'm like $2,000 away from the COA. I'm like, is the school happy? Yeah. Is everything paid? Yeah. You're fine. You don't have to spend to that number, but it is a number where aid works backwards off of that. There are families and students, families that take the plus loan right up to the number. When we talk with them, we're like, hey, do you really need every dollar? No, we can knock like $3,000. It's $3,000 that you're not going to be paying interest on if you can make it work. Let's get that number down right out of the gate, okay? Direct costs, cost of attendance, Federal Student Aid, FSA ID. On our website, on our resources page, we have, oh, there it is right there, resources, good. We have a one-pager on filing your FSA ID, getting your FSA ID. FSA ID is your signature. FSA ID is your signature. It's how the student is going to log into their FAFSA. Remember, it's the student's FAFSA. It's how the parent is going to sign, right? The FSA ID is very important. Student needs an FSA ID, a parent needs an FSA ID. Student needs an FSA ID, parent needs an FSA ID. Studies have shown when people hear me speak, they often go home and get their FSA ID that night. That's actually not scientific, I just made that up, okay? But FSA ID is a big time thing, and if the school here has a FAFSA filing day, you go to the computer lab and stuff like that, okay? Get it before then. Don't play with the FSA ID the same day as you're filing the FAFSA. Get it done, get it out of the way, okay? All right? What's an FSA ID? User account for student and parent, confirms your identity, used to log into the FAFSA, serves as your electronic signature. Years ago, we used to have a PIN, okay? Years ago, we used to have a PIN. One day, this is not a joke, we were in the middle, this is about 5 years ago, give or take, maybe 6, I'm getting old. One day, we're filing FAFSAs, and out of the blue, the FAFSA shuts down. No joke. FAFSA shuts down, and it stayed down for quite a while. What we found out were hackers were going in and stealing people's information by calling and asking for the PIN. and people were losing all sorts of identity information like crazy. Well, FSA, Federal Student Aid, was not happy. Federal Student Aid was not happy about that one bit. So now they created the FSA ID, much more secure, okay? You get your FSA ID, this is how you sign, this is how the student logs into their FAFSA, okay? Very important, get it out of the way. Is it hard? No. Is it very straightforward? Yes. Here's the one thing though. Unlike random online account or something, where they say, oh, did you forget? You go, yeah, they send you a new, like this. These people got scammed, and they're not happy about it, right? So when you have trouble with your FSA ID or something, like that, just take your time. I was helping a family a few years back, they looked up at me, they go, what's our favorite color? I go, I don't know. And that was their security question. I said, blue? I was like, I don't know. And they got locked down, okay? Gotta be very careful because they do not like people trying to get reset and stuff like that. Just get it right, get it set, write it down somewhere. Okay, I know they say don't write it down. I gotta write down stuff. I cannot remember things, so I have to write it down. FSA ID, big time deal. Okay? Notes when creating your account. Student and parent cannot have the same email. Student and parent cannot have the same email. Do not use a high school email address. Good idea right now, okay, yay. Students are gonna have this with them for a long time to come. And all of a sudden they might not have access to their high school account and all that. Use something that's gonna be more permanent. Must provide a social security number, required to link email or mobile phone number to account. This is again another way that they're trying to increase security, okay? And this is really pretty right here. It's not showing up here today for whatever reason with the Google Docs or whatever, okay? Really pretty. Go in there, set up your FSA ID, and get going. My goodness, all these pretty graphics. Okay, fafsa.gov, that's where you go to file your FAFSA. Okay, everybody here for seniors this year, seniors, okay, good, seniors. High school graduation year 2022. FAFSA year 22-23. So when you file after October 1, we're looking at the 22-23. So when you go in there, you'll see the 21-22 along with the 22-23. And people go, why is there a 21-22 still? That's like so last year. There's students in college right now that are using it. They're using it for their current classes and stuff, so there's an overlap. So you have 21-22, 22-23, then 21-22 will fall off, 22-23, 23-24. So it moves along. You graduate in 22, your FAFSA year for freshman year of college is 22-23. Academic year, July 1, 22 through June 30, 23. FAFSA open date is October 1 of 21. And just to throw one more year at you so we get the whole sweep, the tax year data is from 2020. So the tax year data for those that are going to be seniors right now, that are going to graduate, we're looking at 2020 taxes, the taxes that you filed in the beginning of 21, for the student who's going to graduate in 22, so that they can have their 22-23 school year. And there's a really important reason why they do this. Because in the olden days, like 6 years ago, we used to have this mad dash where the state filing deadline was March 10. Did we have computers at that point? Yeah, we did. Okay, that was a joke for the kids, but it's mostly adults here. Okay, so anyway, you would have a mad dash. The FAFSA would open on January 1, and it would close, the state deadline was March 10, right? So we had this little window. People are trying to file their taxes on January 1, January 10, January 30. It was crazy. And then the state deadline was March 10. So we were just working night and day. It was crazy. The state extended their deadline to April 15, but we're not going to leave it. We're not going to cut that close, okay? And so the government said, hey, we have this tool where we're going to import all your information from the IRS. Huge, okay? They extend the date to April 15. The government moves the taxes back to October 1. The FAFSA opened October 1 from January 1. They move it back, the state moves it forward. We got this whole big window, and people still miss. April 14th at midnight, we get calls. Anyway, but by going to the 2020 taxes on October 1, almost every family in the country has filed. But at that time, it was such a mad dash, people hadn't filed, it was crazy. So that's why we use the 2020 tax. We get 100 calls in a week Is it really 2020 tax data? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. It just seems wrong. 2020 tax data, FAFSA opens October 1, and it's for the seniors that are going to graduate in 2022. Okay? Yeah, please.
What if your seniors graduating in December of this year?
Yes. When is the school going to begin for the classes? Probably fall or?
Well, January, but it's like going to sit out a little bit.
Yeah, you're right. Take a little break. Right. So just give us a call depending on when they're going to start and all that, so we make sure you file the right FAFSA, get it done depending on when the classes start, but we don't want them to miss out on aid. Give us a call. Just give us a call. That's a great question, because we're crossing over between. That's very good. That's a great question. Awesome. Awesome. Don't hesitate to call the team. We're happy to talk about it. Come on. Let's see. There's all these yellow. They give me all these yellow ones. There, let's go back one. Here we go. Good. FAFSA login. The FAFSA is the student's FAFSA. The FAFSA is the student's FAFSA. The student uses the student's FSA ID to log in to the student's FAFSA. Okay? Parent will use the student's name, SSN, date of birth, and whatnot to log in to do the parent part. We understand that the parent information on the FAFSA is a big deal. We understand, but it's the student's FAFSA on which the parent is inputting their information. Okay? It's the student's FAFSA where the parent is inputting their information. Again, they always show my student aid. I do it on a laptop, especially the first time. There are all sorts of wonderful little helper things. In the old days, we had paper, pencil, eraser, okay? Now we have these little bubbles for everything, okay? You hover, it spits out the information. It's really good. And if not, call this number. We're going to get you your answer, but it's the student's FAFSA, student FSA ID, parent logs in, and it'll ask for the student's information, so you are helping the right student. Remember I talked about the 2 different years at the top, what are we dealing with, who are we dealing with? Remember, you're going to go home tonight. Studies have shown people hear the speech, they go home and do their FSA ID. When you go to file your FAFSA, or the student is filing their FAFSA and you're helping, when you go home and you do that, when you go in October to file the FAFSA, when you log in, all that stuff that the FSA ID asked for populates in. They go, oh, we know who this is. And it populates in, right? Like when you go back to, order a sub sandwich or whatever. Oh, we know you, and this is your favorite sub. It's like, no, I'm getting something different today, okay? So you go in there and all this information populates. It's like, oh yeah, I did that other night. We heard the boring guy, okay? So we got 20, 21, 22, then we have 22, 23, welcome, okay, start the FAFSA, start the 22, 23 FAFSA, okay? If you want to stop at some point, you just create a save key, little 4 to 8 characters save key. You don't have to do it all in one setting. You can go, after October 1, go in, start, stop, save key, it's all good. No problem at all. You don't have to do it in one setting. Student demographics, very straightforward. They like to know, never attended college, 2nd year sophomore, 3rd year junior, 4th year senior. Just very straightforward. They're trying to align up where you are in the process. Remember, so much of this information goes out to different places because the state uses it, the federal government uses it, the colleges use it. So there will just be some demographic information right there. Yes, please.
If a student has taken college classes as a high school student, do they say never attended college?
Yeah, you could, but you could also go the other direction. This is not something here that's going to be a big breaker as far as determining, the amounts and whatnot. But they do like to know. So yeah, that's a good point as well. But you want to put, I would go with never attended college. Yeah, absolutely. But they might get credits for however much time, which is wonderful. We're a big proponent of that. So you give that information. Don't lose sleep over this one right here. Okay? Demographic information, but don't lose sleep. What is this doing? Here we go. Up to 10 colleges. You cannot have more than 10 colleges on the FAFSA. Only the colleges that you put on the FAFSA can see your information on the FAFSA. So this is another way that 3,000 schools across the country couldn't just go looking at your information. Only the schools you list can see your information. The good news is people can't look and see your information. The bad news is if for some reason a school comes in out of the blue late in the game, you didn't change the FAFSA, they can't see your information to then do the work they need to offer you an award letter. So if they're not on here, they can't see the information they need to do their work. So if a school shows up in the mix and it's a serious contender, get them on here, okay? Some people are very, very particular about this. They're very careful. They have 7. It's like, well, there's this 8th school. It's like, I would put them on. You don't want to forget later and cause hassle for yourself, okay?
You change your schools up to
Yes.
15?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sometimes I move them around based on the NCAA tournament. There's all sorts of strategies. But you absolutely can. You absolutely can. But you can't have more than 10. Okay? We always recommend having an Indiana, at least one, even if the student says, I'm leaving Indiana. I don't know why anybody would. But if they were like, I'm leaving Indiana, just put one on there anyway. We know where we are. Okay, select colleges up to 10, encourage at least one from Indiana, select housing. Oh, and then it'll say, okay, what type of housing? Again, this is the type of thing where, again, this is not going to change big things, but it lets the school know, okay, on campus, off campus, you know, things like that. It's just helpful to try to get a picture of what the student is dealing with as far as costs. Dependency questions, all this leads to one thing, and you could go home right now, you go home, get your, well, when I'm done, you can go home, get your FSA ID, do all those wonderful things. You can also check on dependency questions. Right there at fafsa.gov, it says dependency questions. You can click on it and check. Again, when we talk at high schools, it's usually dependent students, okay? But you have some questions right here, and again, you could check this out when you go home. Just go in there and check, are you a veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces? You're a veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces, you're independent, okay? If you're married, you're independent, okay? None of the above, okay, great. And so you ask this question, if you're married, you're independent, okay? So there's a few questions right here, okay? And that determines dependent or independent. Why does that matter? Because if the student is dependent, the parental information is needed, which is usually the case, okay? If they're independent, not. Who is the parent? Number one question we get. This is on the FAFSA site because this is the number one question we get. Okay? Who is the parent? Biological or adoptive parents is the starting point. Okay? Biological or adoptive parents is the starting point. Let's go this way just because I'm over here right now. Widowed, single parent listed on the FAFSA. And again, this is on the FAFSA website. This is not something that you got to memorize and all this. Widowed would be single parent listed on the FAFSA. Okay? Married or unmarried and living together, both parents listed on the FAFSA. Okay? Divorced, separated, or unmarried and not living together. Who did the student live with more in the last 12 months? Who did the student live with more in the last 12 months in that situation? That's who the FAFSA is interested in. I can't emphasize this enough. We get calls all the time where there's like agreements and, I'm not going to be paying for the all these types of things, divorce decrees and all these types of things. They are what they are. But the FAFSA is its own thing. So the FAFSA, this is who they want. And this is the number one question we get every day, all year. Okay? Who did the student live with more in the last 12 months? Sometimes it's 7 months, 5 months, 8 months, 4 months. Where the student lived more in the last 12 months. If parent's single, then only one. If that parent is single, that's the parent on the FAFSA. That's it. If the parent remarried, then the parent and the step-parent are listed on the FAFSA. Pretty straightforward, but this is the number one question we get. Okay? And it's right there on the site. Don't hesitate to call. We get this every single day. Parent financial information. Parent financial information. Here's the best news I have for you in decades. Okay? A couple years back, they created something called Link to the IRS. In the old days, like 7 years ago, we used to have paper and pencil and rulers and calculators and all this stuff. tax returns, and it was crazy. We used to make pastries and just sit there all night, okay? Link to the IRS. Parent gets to this part, they click, link to the IRS, boom, the information comes in from the IRS, from the 2020 taxes that you filed at the beginning of 2021, and it populates the whole FAFSA for that part. Shoots it right in. It also gives a gold star, not technically a gold star, but it announces that you imported it from the IRS. You did not type it in. The school knows you did not type it in.
So if it's messed up, you're kind of.
Exactly. And that's why there's edit steps that you can do here. You'll see corrections. You can go in and do edit steps. But once you do an edit step, it makes a note that, oh, there was some, you touched it. Until then, boom, gold star. Because the schools have to do some checking down the road and whatever, and if you have the gold star, they're like, you didn't even type it in. They have an issue, go to the IRS, okay? But this saves families so much time. And so every night when we're doing FAFSA completions after October 1, the family's like ready to hit link to the IRS, and we're like, it worked, yeah. Every time it's like a jackpot in Vegas. It's like, yeah, okay, and it comes right in. Okay, it's really good. It's really good, okay? So you bring in that information, boom, you transfer it in, it populates, you get the gold star, and on we go. No joke.
What if your income has changed significantly from that tax year?
I'm so glad you asked that question. The IRS information is the IRS information. Does not change. I'm going to get to a slide in a moment that talks about changes. Because as we went from the income information being literally 2 months from the time the FAFSA was filed to something that was now a year and a half, the longer that period became, it helped with FAFSA filing, but it created a much bigger area where things could have changed. And there's a process where you appeal, but your FAFSA doesn't change. The FAFSA stays as exactly as it is. But the school can make adjustments, and I'll talk about how you do that. But the FAFSA doesn't change. People lose jobs. Think about the pandemic, think about COVID, think about when there was the Lehman Brothers stock market, all this type of stuff. We've had real turbulent times, and now there, where we've extended the period, I had the statistics last year, I can't remember off the top of my head, but the number of appeals, it went through the roof. And the schools expect it, they know that. They know it's going to be the case, and at the conferences, they're like, oh my gosh, like how many, and it was significant, and that's what the financial aid offices work on. Okay, so you're not alone. There will be a question, okay, so now, okay, that's all the IRS, that's all the income, all that stuff goes right in. And then you just have this one last little bit, which is really where the experts come in to help. Don't hesitate to call my team if you need help, call the school, you know, wonderful people, okay? As of today, does the total amount of your parents' current assets, and you notice you can click on assets there, you can click on the question mark, okay, exceed $7,100. Not everybody sees the same number here. Okay? And if the answer is yes, there will be some more questions. If the answer is no, based on what they're exactly asking for, you click no. Okay? Assets do not include the values of the home you live in, retirement plans, or life insurance plans. Do not. Assets do include the values of cash savings, checking, real estate, stocks, bonds, 529 saving plan, and other investments. Okay? How all this is calculated, how all this is treated, there's different ways. But we just want you to know that some of that there is not being asked about. Some of it here is, and then you input the information they want so it can do the whole calculation the way they want to. But this is where our experts will sit with you for 20, 25 minutes sometimes, or if they come here to the school, they'll sit with you, you know, and they'll talk with you about the different answers. Because this is the one part that still, people get confused sometimes, and it's understandable. Okay, but this is the assets question on the FAFSA, above and beyond income. If you're given the opportunity to skip forward, we always say, I just double checked with the team before I left, we always say yes, skip. If offered the opportunity to skip the remaining income and or asset questions, yes allows you to move to the student financials, no allows you to keep submitting additional information. Our recommendation is yes, you move on. Okay? Do you want to skip the remaining questions? Not everybody gets the option to skip, okay? And if you put in yes, you click next, and we move to the student. Guess what? I got great news for you. Okay? Student financial information, the students get asked the exact same questions as the parents. The student part often goes very, very fast. They might have 6 accounts offshore in the Cayman Islands, stuff like that, but usually it goes very fast. But it's the same questions, the same process, link to the IRS if you want, additional assets, same questions. So once we get to this point, it usually moves really fast. Okay? Same questions, student financial, IRS data retrieval tool if they want, all those types of things. Sign and submit. What are we going to use to electronically sign the FAFSA?
FSA ID.
I love coming here. FSA ID. Signature needed. Student signature needed. A parent signature needed. Student signature needed. A parent signature needed.
Just one, if it's a
Correct.
parent, okay.
Correct. Yep. But it has to be official in the fine print. They're saying you're not playing games, you're not moving money around, blah, blah, blah. I was talking to an attorney yesterday after yesterday's event, and she was like, I'm reading all of it. I go, oh yeah, it's a party, okay? But you sign it, and you're off and running. Okay, but we're not done, okay? Confirmation number, I wanna make sure that you get a confirmation number, either do a screen save, do a print off of this page. I want you to have the confirmation number. I would just die if somebody was gonna get a whole bunch of aid and then for some reason they said you didn't file. I want you to have that confirmation number. If anybody tried to say you didn't make it, you go, no, I did. And here it is. It's right there. Okay? Print the page, keep it, save it. I don't have horror stories, it's been good. But I just would die if somebody ever was told that they didn't file and they really did. Okay?
So it says, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
at the very bottom,
no,
it
please.
said the estimated family or expected.
Yes,
So it's $490.
yes. Now, that was a perfect question because it was a segue into this
Sorry.
one, right? No. Your mind is following the logic of the presentation. Okay? So $490, the expected family contribution. This does not mean that college is going to cost your family $490. It doesn't work that way. However, if you have $490 and somebody else has $10,490, you're much further ahead in the financial aid queue. And schools have to have a process, a protocol, how they're going to give out their limited resources. They can't just jump around and say, okay, so-and-so for no good reason who has a 20,000 EFC gets all this. It doesn't work that way. And when they get checked by federal student aid, man, it better match. Okay? So they do a great job. But $490 is an area where if a family called us, we'd be like, hey, you're going to be in the mix for some financial aid. And let me say one more thing. The net price calculators on the college websites, there's net price calculators on every college website. They have to have one. That moves it right along. You can answer a lot of questions. Sometimes they're just like, do you know your EFC? You plug it in, and it just moves it right along. It's an average. It could be off a little bit, but it's a really good gauge. And this is where families can get a real good feel well ahead of time what they might need to pay. And that's what we preach. Have a real good idea what it's really going to cost. We'd rather have you know about it in November than next July, right? So that's a really good thing. That helps there. They'll do some estimates of what Pell Grant might be, what the Stafford loan, see there, the $5,500 we talked about. You know, it's fine. They put that out there, okay? EFC, estimated Pell if eligible, direct student loan, okay? All other aid determined by the college's financial aid office. That's why we want the award letter from the college. Because that's where the rubber really meets the road. Yes, please.
Are award letters negotiable? So if you end up with like 3 award letters from 3 different schools, you lay them on somebody's desk and say...
The camera's on, okay? So, I have friends at every college across the state. Well, that's an interesting question. Here's what I always say. Number one, have I talked to families that have gone back and asked yes? Have I talked to families that the number has then changed? But I want to throw out one. So the answer to that is yes. Number one, I'd be very polite. I'd be, okay? But here's number two that's really important. the schools, and especially the financial aid office, are guessing. There are so many moving parts. How many students? Who's going to accept? Okay, they accept. Who's going to actually come? Okay, what does the school offer? You know, what does the school give the financial aid office for institutional money, right? All these crazy variables, right? The state amounts. What is the state going to give for each of these different grants and things like that? There's so many moving parts. So the financial aid office, well ahead of time, has to make estimations. And so I like to joke and all that. But the point being, you really could, in July or August, the school's like, we always had this many students actually show up, and it's down 4%. There literally could be some of that money that they had allocated that they were sure was going to go, that the students didn't appear. And so they have these dollars. So it's a very legitimate thing. So I would absolutely, I don't think you can haggle 13 times, but I definitely think it doesn't hurt to say, hey, we're looking at a couple different schools and we're just wondering if this is the best. I had a father in the northern part of the state about 3 or 4 years ago. I know the school, I know the whole situation. Asked twice politely, and they were going to go a different direction. The student really did prefer this one wonderful Indiana school. They reached out a third time, and they got it, and it was very significant. And I asked some of my team members, I said, what do you think? And one of our team members said it had to be money that they were sure was going to go to some students, and they just went elsewhere. That was a guess. Schools won't tell me. They don't want to big about that. But the answer is yes, you can. Be polite. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. Next steps. Processing results. Okay, so you get, okay, yay, it's in. Okay, process successfully. Okay, down here, make FAFSA corrections. Print your student aid report. You can just go in there, print your student aid report. This gets sent off to Washington. It's all digital now. In the old days, right, we had the Pony Express come and you handed it 3 weeks later. Oh, it was a whole thing, right? It happens fast. It's a SAR report, FAFSA corrections, okay? It all happens on here, and you get emails. That's why use an email that you use. Make sure you watch it. Make sure you make the corrections that are needed, or maybe there'll be none needed. But you can go right in and fix them. In the old days, you had to wait for the thing to get mailed back. It was a whole ordeal. That's not the case anymore, but watch your email. By the way, have the student watch their email. Now you can go in here and you'll see some things here, which is also a good idea, but watch the doggone email. Students all the time, right? Oh yeah, there was this thing with all this. It looks like gobbledygook, like some of the correspondence. It's not like important FAFSA thing for you to fix. Like it doesn't look like that. What the heck? Special circumstances. The question came up about what if, things happen. Things happen every year, especially during a pandemic, okay? Things happen. Changes to your situation not represented on the FAFSA. You put in the FAFSA the information as requested. Special circumstances are between you and the financial aid office at the school. While state could say, yes, we're going to make an adjustment, Taylor could say no. Franklin could say yes, IU could say no. USI could say yes, Calumet could say no. It's up to the school. Okay? Change in employment or income status, or 2 changes in employment and income status. Medical expenses not covered by insurance. Change in parent marital status. Unusual dependent care expenses. All these types of things that we think about. Okay? You don't change the FAFSA, you alert the financial aid office that a significant change has occurred. And then you work with them. They need documentation, because in that file, when they get audited, in that file, they got to show why they gave you additional financial aid. They get audited. Once the school says to you, you got an extra $5,000, you're done, you're good to go. They then are going to get audited down the road. They have to prove why they gave you additional aid. It's called special circumstances. Every college knows about it. It's a formal process. You're not alone. Financial aid offer. I always talk, I love the award letter so much, I talk about this slide ahead of time. I always talk ahead of it. Okay, there will be a financial aid offer. It'll cover cost of attendance, financial aid amounts, grant scholarships, options to pay the remaining balance. Do you want to do a payment plan? Do you want to do this? What do you want to do? Because the school has to get their money. Timing and delivery, okay? Different colleges. Well, I got this one, but I didn't get this one. When is this one going to go? The colleges at conferences are like, did you send yours? When are you going to send yours? It's a whole thing. And every year it's different, okay? Sometimes they want to send it out early. Sometimes they wait a little bit. Like, it's crazy. It's a whole thing. Review cost financial aid offers. Clearly understand your obligations. Ask questions. If there's anything on an award letter that you don't know, call my team. They'll be happy to chat with you. Understand it. Know what it is. Okay? Sample finance. I was really wondering if this was going to show up. So this is Invested Sample University. Okay? All right? We just wanted to show you kind of what you're looking at here. Okay? Cost of attendance. What does it come up to? Financial aid offers, Pell Grant, abandoned, institutional, grant and scholarship subtotal. All right? Work study, some loan. How much is the total financial aid? What's the remaining balance? Which direction do you want to go with that? Some of them are not as clear as this. Okay? But this is how it works. Okay? And you want to really get a handle on what is grant aid, what is free money, what is the remaining balance, and how do you get there, and see if it works for your family.
So in that example, you
Yes.
have to cut a check for $7,705 before you trot your kid to school.
Or
Set up a payment plan.
you could set up a payment plan, or you could take one of the loans.
Personal loan out or whatever.
Exactly, home mortgage. There's a lot of different ways, and this is why families will call us and chit chat, like, figure out what is best.
Less for 2 years.
Yes, yes.
At what point in the process does this arrive? So after acceptance and after you said you want to go there?
Yes,
Or?
yeah, you'll file the FAFSA. So you're talking late, you're talking winter, you're talking at the beginning, but it changes sometimes by weeks and weeks. But once after FAFSA opens October 1, so once you get into November, once you get into December, but there's all these strategies. All the schools have different consultants and strategies. Like, we want to be first, like we want to get it there first. But at the same time, they want to put out their aid in a very strategic way. I mean, they want to know what their class is going to look like. Okay, where are we going to divvy this up? How much money do we have to share? It's a whole thing. So they're trying to take their time a little bit, but they also don't want to have all the students commit somewhere else. So kind of November, December, you could ask the school, when do you think it's going to come? And when I talk to the college people, my friends, and I'm like, oh, did you mail award letters? Yeah, well, no, yeah, well, soon. Like next week, I think. I'm like, oh, okay.
So is that just for kids that are applying, like, within the general dates, not the early action and early decision kids?
So again, families will reach out to us. They're like, hey, should we take this? I was an early decision. I got into the Syracuse University School of Communications early decision. So the letter came. It was December of my senior year, and it said you have like 2 weeks to determine. If you send $1,000 or your first payment with this, you're in. And my dad looked at me, he's like, I don't know. Like, well, and they said, if you don't do early decision, we'll revisit this, but we can't promise you that you're going to get to come. And we didn't know. We were like, okay, we did it. Like, we'll never know. We did it. We sent it in. But I could have said no and saw how it went later, but we said we're not going to risk it. So that's what we did. But yeah, that's why there's so many layers to this whole process. There's so many layers to this whole process, and that's why we're here to help you any step of the way as you move on through it. But winter, and some schools, you know, they'll come out, and then other schools still haven't sent them. So it's always interesting.
Because some schools you don't have to apply until January or February.
Well, and that's why we talk about the April 15 deadline. People are like, so you could still get state aid if you file the FAFSA on April 14. Yes. But the school might be like, yeah, no, we're full on.
So can you get state aid from Indiana if your student isn't going to a school in Indiana?
No, you gotta be here. You gotta be here. But it's like, people are like, when they moved it to April, March 10 was good. When they moved, especially when the federal went to October 1 with the FAFSA. But when they moved it to April 15, people were like, how can you miss April 15? Like, you know, people do, they miss April 15. But this process, we want you to, hey, oh, I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that. I want to share one more thing. You will see national articles talking about October 1, how it's a derby, and you have to file the FAFSA day 1 or you're going to miss out on aid. That's not true. And I've talked to people at the Wall Street Journal or New York Times, I can't remember, it was the big one, the big ones. And we did an interview about something else. And I said, could you please stop scaring everybody that every state is a derby state? They're like, well, no, many are. I go, I know many are, and many aren't. So they tell people, like, we'll get calls on October 1, and people are like, no, I gotta file today. Like, today I gotta file, otherwise I miss out on all the state aid. And we're like, you don't. That's not how it works here. But some states are, first come, first served, so you get it in on, 12/01 on October 1. Yes?
Can a non-resident get state aid from a state where their kid is going? So let's say my kid goes to school in Pennsylvania.
What they're gonna get is more institutional money. So what happened, great questions. So what's gonna happen there is they're not gonna get that, but what they're gonna get, the school, for out-of-state students, it's X number of dollars more, which is very interesting. If you're looking at out-of-state, so do this, and you'll have fun with this. Look at the net price for out-of-state students at that particular school, right? And compare it versus if you stay home and what those numbers are. And it's very interesting every year. But the point is, because it's so much higher, and this is where the schools with the state is generous to the schools, and they go, hey, we don't want to see 2% Hoosiers, like, right? So it's a whole thing. But when you go out of state, you'll lose that part of it, but you'll see the institutional money go up, trying to bring that number down a little bit. It always gets back to net price and where that net price comes from. Great question. No, yeah, great question. Did I see another hand? Okay, no, great question. We'll help. College Bowl Sunday. Do you know, Christy, do we come here? I can't remember if we come here for a FAFSA completion.
We are doing one.
Okay.
I don't remember when it is offhand, but we have one scheduled with you already.
And I should have checked before I left the office. That's on me. We will be here to do FAFSA filing, my team. They don't send me this, I'm the good people. We will be here to file FAFSAs, and I apologize for not knowing the date. College Bowl Sunday is another option. I've been blessed to be the co-chair of College Bowl Sunday for years and years. collegebowlsunday.org is where you go for that. That's 38 sites this year filing FAFSAs. I always like to go to my particular school. I think that's a wonderful thing. But if you can't go or that day doesn't work or whatever, College Bowl Sunday is awesome. And there will be experts to help you there at College Bowl Sunday. All right, FAFSA filing started right here in Indiana. Don't forget that. That's wonderful. Here's those one-pagers. We have a one-pager on everything. If you go and you want to do a college search, you want to ask questions of the college, but you don't want to think of your own, you can borrow ours. Go to the website. We'll never know you were there. Print them off. Create your FSA ID scholarship search. I talked about that one, FAFSA checklist. We have a one-pager on everything. Yes, sir?
October 7th.
Here? Awesome. Awesome. October 7th, we're going to be here. Okay? All right? Please be here. It's going to be a lot of fun. Where the heck? Oh, my pictures aren't there. Okay, now I told you there was two very important reasons why you had to have one of these books. All right? We're on social media. I post on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram all the time, and I say we had an amazing time talking financial aid at the school. Sometimes people don't want their picture taken, and sometimes people don't want to make a face that we had an amazing time. So you can hide behind the book. Okay, that's the other reason, but I'm about to take a picture in a moment and say we had an amazing time. So one time my little kids back at home said, Daddy, they don't look like they had an amazing time. I go, it was wonderful. They were all having fun. Okay, so everybody, I'm going to count to 3. Everybody smile, say financial aid. 1, 2, 3. Oh, you guys are wonderful. No, I'm not joking. My little girl said, Daddy, they don't look like they're having fun. We had fun. You just, not at that moment. But in a serious note, on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, but Twitter and Facebook I post every day. When I find scholarships and things, I'll put it on Facebook and that. We post every day. I will put a picture saying we had an awesome time, so look for that. But we put updates all the time from the federal government, the Commission for Higher Ed, all sorts of stuff. We post it because financial aid, there's news every doggone day. And so I always want to share that with everybody, so don't hesitate to follow us on Twitter and all that. And here's us, oh, the picture, this one came out great, okay? This guy right here, he's shady, watch this guy, okay? The rest are really nice, okay? That's our number, that's our email, all that stuff, okay? I stick around, I'll stick around, okay? I'm happy to answer questions. You people are wonderful. I hope you had some fun and laughs, okay? And good luck with all this, and we're here for you if you need us, okay?
Thank you.